never fit in as a child. I was always, the outcast. I never really had friends. And around junior year of high school, my friends were like, hey, you should come hang out with us. I was like, all right, that sounds cool. So, we went to this park and they pulled out some weed, some marijuana. And I was like, I'm not trying that, that's not who I am. I grew up really religious. My parents made me go to church every Sunday. I was in Sunday school, youth groups. And so they pulled out the weed, and I told them I wasn't trying it. They're like, come on, you should try it, it makes you feel good. And I was like, well, what I'm feeling now isn't very fun, so maybe I should try it. So we rolled up, and I ended up smoking it. And, I was on top of this stand in a football field. And I remember I would look up at the sky, and it was a clear night, and I was like, they told me I was talking to aliens and extraterrestrial animals and stuff like that. And I was like, well, that's weird. And I thought it was kind of cool at the same time. Like, I've never really communicated with them before, So I tried weed that night, and we rode around, and we listened to music, and it was honestly one of the best nights I had had in a long time. And I finally felt like I actually fit in and had friends. About 3 months later, I moved in with my ex-boyfriend, who's now my ex-boyfriend, and I lived with him for about 7 months, and he sold drugs. I was introduced to Oxycontin, morphine, hydrocodone, a lot of pills, Xanax, Adderall, and I was very curious. I've always been a curious person, so I really wanted to try all of that stuff. I was like, yeah, I get to try all of this, I'm the lab rat, I'll be your test dummy, and so I was going through withdrawals from one of my antidepressants, and that was the first night he gave me an oxycodone, and it was like a really warm, fuzzy feeling, it made me feel really warm and fuzzy inside and happy, and I had the best sleep I'd ever had, and about a few weeks after that, I started doing cocaine. And I started just trying all these other drugs and stuff, and I knew it was a problem when my friend brought what was heroin around to the house, and he was like, oh, who wants to try some heroin, and I was like, oh, I'll try some, and I ended up trying it. I snorted it, and it made me a little drowsy. But it wasn't the full effect, and when I tried that, I was like, man, I think I might have a problem, And a few weeks before that, my ex-boyfriend had said he had turned down a sale to me, and he said, you're an addict. And, my mom had always told me, you're an addict, you need to get help. I was like, no, I'm not, I'm just a regular person, I'm not an addict. I was ashamed to be called an addict, and it was just really embarrassing to me. But after I did that, she wouldn't let me come home to live, and so I knew I had to get help somehow. One day, my mom was like, hey, I'm going to take you to Chipotle. I was like, all right, we'll go to Chipotle, get lunch, hang out, go shopping. And so we got Chipotle, she didn't lie to me straight up. But we got Chipotle, and then she was like, well, we're going to go somewhere. I'm like, where are we going? And she said, well, we're going to go to this recovery organization. And I was like, no, we're not. And I tried to jump out the moving car, I'm dying before I go here. I'm not going here. And we pulled up, and she was like, all right, let's go in. I was like, oh my God, do I really have to do this? She's like, unless you want to live in a homeless shelter, yes, come on with me. So, we went into the office, and I was throwing a total fit. I was just being a spoiled brat. I don't want to go here. I hate all of you. You guys are not cool. It was scary, honestly. And I did not think I needed the help. I didn't think I was an addict at all, so. thought I was never an addict. You know, I'm adopted, so my birth mother was an alcoholic. And it's like, I was like, oh, I hate her, you know, she's riffraff, you know, she drank and all this stuff, you know, when she was pregnant with me and stuff. And it like really messed me up emotionally. And, you know, I always hated her for it. And, you know, for me to realize to myself that I was an addict, I was like, I felt like I was admitting I was just like her. And, you know, it was really tough at first. But, like, as soon as I, like, you know, started going to meetings and, you know, meeting with other people and the house and everything, I would introduce myself as, hi, I'm Elizabeth, I'm an addict. You know, and the more I said that, the more it kind of clicked. The more it was open to me that, hey, maybe I really was an addict. You know, I couldn't control my using. I would use more than I would have to. I would get so high to the point I was throwing up and, you know, eating too much and all of this stuff. The best part about a recovery, I would say, is getting my family back. Getting, you know, making actual friends, people who actually care about you genuinely and don't want to use you for your weed, your money, you know, for sex, you know, for all of that type of stuff, you know. Recovery means a lot to me. I can talk to my mom and look her dead in the eyes and not have to lie to her. I can look at my dad and, you know, he calls me princess again, you know, he had stopped doing that. And we just kind of had started getting in a lot of arguments, and, you know, I would come home high and he was like, you're high, and I would tell him, no, I'm not, you know. My mom would get up in my face, she'd be like, are you high, you know. I was like, I'm not, and, you know, the whole time they knew. They're not stupid. They grew up before I did, so they knew what stuff was. I really appreciate my parents' support. They've shown me a lot of support, and they always are there for me when I need them. And I love getting my relationship back with them and with my brother. And I'm 71 days clean today, and I absolutely would not go back to the way I was living if someone paid me $1 million.